So where's your woman?
Pardon?
So where's your woman?
My wife.
I guess it's. I think that the first half there, I knew you decided to so. And I know you that. There. So right now I have this putty feeling in my mouth. And everything tastes like lemon. So it kind of sucks. And I use.
That works. That works. For 15th, AAA'z Night. First of all, you guys, I really just want to welcome you. First, my name is Sue Twiddell. I think the next one's different. I'm a regional vice president here with Primerica. I've been here, my gosh, I cannot believe it. I've been here for about 15 and a half, 16 years now. When you look back, it's amazing how fast time goes, isn't it?
Yes.
It's crazy. And I'll tell you a little bit more of my story as I'm going through. But I really wanted to welcome everyone here. And I know people are here for different reasons. Some of people had set their hands tied behind their back and kind of forced in. You're sitting down, you're going to hear what's going on. Other people here have probably clients, am I right? Yes. Probably some of those wandering around here too. Okay, so, and then there's some of us here, some of us associates here as well. So I want to welcome everybody. And one of the things that I really, really want to do tonight is just make sure that everybody understands what we're doing and why. Because I think if that's the case, then whoever you're here supporting, it's going to be that much easier to support. So are you guys all good with that?
Yes.
All right, with that in mind, I want to take you back a couple years when we were kind of considering how we were going to tell the story, what we were going to do. And we said, you know what? We knew some things. We absolutely knew some things out there. One of the things that we knew is that there's a whole group of people called the wealthy. Everyone agree with that? And the wealthy have pretty much everything institutionalized. Their kids are going to college, right? Not a matter of if they're going. It might be where they're going, but not if they're going. They're going. Okay. How about opportunity, ownership? Most wealthy own businesses. You don't work for somebody else. Why would you work for somebody else when you can work for yourself?
Right.
Yeah? How about financial freedom? Come and go as you want, whenever you want, in any style that you want to go, come and go in. If I want to go to New York to go to dinner tomorrow night, I am jumping on a plane and I'm going to New York to dinner. Pretty nice lifestyle, right? We'd all take it? Yeah, absolutely. How about financial guidance? The financial advisors love the wealthy. Why? It's where the money is. It just makes sense. So this group of people has everything institutionalized up there, and it's not a bad thing. We all want to be wealthy, right?
Right.
Okay, if given a choice of being wealthy or not. No, I didn't know so. All right, well now there's another group of people. We'll get right back onto that. Another group of people right down here called the financially dependent, or the not so wealthy. And the government takes care of them. They have free preschools. Their kids get to go to preschool. We know it's important. Then the government's going to make sure that they have every opportunity to go ahead and get ahead. How about college grants? If the kids qualify, they can go to college. Financial support, gains programs, Medi-Cal, food stamps, all sorts of things, right? And opportunities as well. And this is great because we don't want a whole segment of our population going out. But if we're not here, and we're not here, there's a really big group of people right in the middle. And I just like calling it American families. A lot of people call it Main Street families. And that's what we're going to call it tonight, Main Street families once I get up here. All right, well, we know we want something too. Now, first of all, what's a Main Street family? Well, might make $30,000 a year, might make $300,000 a year. But if we can't up and quit our jobs and do what we want whenever we want to do it, I'm pretty sure we're not here, which means that we're not here. Well, don't let me be important. Preschool is expensive, $600 to $1,000 a month per child. Robin's going to have twins. Couple grand a month for preschool. How's it sound?
Awesome.
Yeah. How about college? Anybody know how expensive college is these days? Very expensive. But we want the kids to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gives them a little bit quicker start on this. The problem is, if we don't have the money to pay for it, those kids are walking out of college with student loans. And they start backwards and trying to catch up right from the very beginning. Love to own a business? Anybody here? That was me. You guys, back 15 years ago, I was a dental hygienist. And I don't know what was inside of me, but something down deep inside said, I want to come and go as I want. I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I'm not a very good employee, as some of you guys know. Laughing at that, right? But I knew that I wanted to have something for myself, not to answer to somebody else. Challenge was, I also knew I didn't have $500,000 to not only have a business, actually to stay in business long enough so that it became profitable. Because it isn't the getting the business, it's actually the staying in business, right? Okay, and how about financial advice? Wouldn't we all love to have financial advice?
Yeah.
Do you have $250,000 to invest so someone actually talks to you? I didn't. There was no one that was going to talk to me. Which means that we don't make enough money to take advantage of the support systems from up there, right? Or from the support systems down here. And we work really hard to pay the taxes to support these guys and to buy the goods and services to support the life. And we spend. And we go around and round in circles. And what ends up happening is we have no access. So what do we do? Because this is kind of a problem. Does anybody see this as a problem?
Yes.
Yeah, I do too. So what do we do with this problem? Well, the first thing most of us do is we turn to what we already know. We turn to the banks and the lenders and the life insurance companies and corporate America. But there's a challenge with that. Are the banks going to get us wealthy? They give us like 1%. How about the lenders? Guys, 29% on a credit card, what's that? On interest. And how about corporate America? Are they going to make sure that we have our businesses? It's not happening. So we know something's wrong there. We know something's got to change, right? Challenge is, we don't even seem to be mad about it. We know it down deep inside, but we go, it's okay, I'll just keep going. Something's going to happen, right? It doesn't become critical until it becomes personal for us. In other words, it isn't a real problem until all of a sudden we're laid off. Or we want to retire and we don't have enough money. Or we have kids that want to go to college and there's no funds. Now all of a sudden it's personal. Now we go, oh, something really has to be done. Well, a group of us said, you know what, this is not okay. We really think that we can change this. We really and truly believe that. We can make that impact. We can make a change. We just have to do it. So I was thinking about it and I go, okay, how do we do this? Well, the wealthy do something that we're not doing, right? They must think and do something different. But I kind of like to know what it is. Now, what we can do is we can wait till next week and we can find out next week what it is. Is that okay with you guys? Or we can have Robin come up and she can take the next part and she can give us a strategy to actually make sure something happens. So everyone, help me welcome Robin Sears.
We can't wait till next week because my dad won't be
Oh, that's right.
I know he's sitting on the edge of his seat to hear the answer. So I also want to thank you all for coming tonight. Tonight's a pretty special night for me. A lot of you who are here have heard us talk about AAA'z Associates. And okay, I touched nothing for the record. Did anyone see me touch anything? I touched nothing. Okay. Many of you know I'm a lawyer for technology companies and I'm incredibly technology challenged. We don't understand it, we just so we talk about AAA'z Advocates and Associates, and my fabulous husband Brett Sears is going to talk a little bit more about that. But the very first reason that you guys are here tonight, that you've been invited by people tonight, is simply to learn more about someone who's special in your life, what they're interested in, what they're doing, what they're invested in, so that you can support it. You know, can you actually genuinely support something you know nothing about? True or false? False, right? We cannot support something that we know nothing about. And that is why tonight is so special, because it is the first night that my dad and stepmom are here Jay and Jackie Gould, to actually hear about what we have dedicated our lives to. So they've gotten bits and pieces of it, but this is the first time they're getting to hear it all at once. And I know that for some of you, it's the first time you're getting to hear it all at once. So it's a real pleasure and an honor that you guys took the time tonight. We know there are lots of other places we can be, and we appreciate that you're spending it with us. So with that said, Sue presented a real big problem, right? I mean, there's no one I've ever talked to when we talk about the economic inequality in this country, when we talk about the fact that there's an access gap, when we talk about the fact that most of this country is living paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by. I had never had someone say, no, you are wrong. Fair? We all agree there's a big problem in this country. Clear, we've established that the folks that we usually turn to aren't going to help us. And so we sat back, a group of us in this room, and said, okay, and let's take a look at how the wealthy think and act when it comes to money. And we boiled it down into 4 principles. Okay, that worked. So far, so good. The first principle is for family. When we talk to people who are wealthy, we know that they make sure that their families never fall backwards if something happens to the main breadwinner in the family. They set up trust funds, they set up financial plans, because they want to make sure that all of the work that they put into play doesn't get lost for the next generation. Mm-hmm. The second thing that we know is they establish habits to build on. If you start saving a little bit of money today, by the end of the year, are you going to have more money than if you didn't save anything at all? Mm-hmm. Yes. So, wealthy people establish habits to build on. Something really interesting we find when we talk to folks who are wealthy, they make money, they figure out what portion of it they're going to save, and they spend the rest. You know what the rest of us do? We make money, we spend it, and then we save what's left. And I don't know about you, but 99.9% of the time, there's nothing left at the end of the month if I plan that way, right? Secure advances with experts. Folks who have a lot of money turn to the experts to make sure that they're protected. Mandy, if you had $2.5 million, would you trust yourself to know what to do with it? What would you do? You would turn to an expert.
I would tell him.
Mandy would say, Eddie, go find the expert. Right? People who don't turn to experts are wealthy people who are experts in money themselves. But for some reason, if we have $5,000 or $10,000 or $25,000, do you know what we do with that money? We put it under the bed. We put it in the bank to earn 1%. We don't believe that it deserves the same attention that $2.5 million does. And yet it's as valuable to us as $2.5 million is. And finally, leveraging strategic partnerships. And this happens to be one of my favorite ones. When we talk to wealthy folks and something difficult happens in their lives, the first thing they do is they call their accountant, they call their lawyer, they call their business partner, they call their best friend, and they all get in a room and say, how are we going to solve this problem? How are we going to put our combined expertise, our combined heads together to get from this experience? What do the rest of us do in a crisis? We close in. We hunker down. Maybe we talk to our spouse. That's the only person we talk to. And we wait until we can come out of the cocoon as a beautiful butterfly. But in the meantime, we've lost all that time. We've used a ton of energy, and we haven't actually leveraged the strategic partnerships that are around us. So these were the 4 principles that we saw that wealthy people use in order to create wealth and to maintain wealth. Well, we sat back and said, okay, we don't have $2.5 million. So what could we do in order to establish this? And my husband has a great analogy. I don't know if you've ever watched those shows or looked at the magazines where they show like a really expensive living room, and then they show you how you can get that same living room for half the price, right? So they're like, if you take the chest of drawers and paint it distressed yourself. It's going to look like the $5,000 option, right? So this is what we came up with as our, reasonable option that we could actually engage in. We had to find the right strategic partner. And the strategic partner that we turned to is Primerica. So how many folks here today have heard of Primerica? Okay, right? Fair number of us in the room. I'm going to share with you a little bit about Primerica that you might actually not know. Part of the reason we turned to Primerica is because Primerica is a $2 billion public company. That meant that Primerica was in the position that we needed to offer to people who really needed those products and services. They could afford to do it because they've got the money to do it, which was really important. They have a track record of delivering to Main Street families. This is a company that understands you and me, understands our need, understands how to negotiate for the right products for our families and our communities. And they have a leverageable system that we could actually implement in our lives, in our communities, and on a national basis. We figured that if we actually took the time to build our own financial services company, that by the time we were done, the problem would be tenfold. We don't have that time. We had to turn to a strategic partner so that we could start making a difference in the problem today. And so that we don't actually have to be experts in the products and services. We just have to be experts in the principles. Make sense? So we said, okay, so how do we lock in advances for a family? And the way that we lock in advances for a family, unless you have 10 times your income saved, is you turn to level term insurance. Term insurance is our opportunity to rent a bag of money so that if something happens to us, our families are protected. How do we establish habits to build on? We turn to our mutual funds. You can save as little as $25 a month in a mutual fund. And what we find is that when we say to a person, Lisa, why don't you save $25 a month? Lisa thinks, oh, that's not much money. Start saving when I can save $500 a month. When do you think Lisa's going to find $500 a month to save? Never. But what we can do is we can get Lisa saving $25 a month this year. And at the end of the year, she's going to have a lot more money than if she didn't start at all. And if she can deal with $25 a month, next year we can increase it to $50. And the year after that, $100. And then $200. And then $400. And the next thing we know, Lisa is saving that $500 a month because she now has the habit of saving. How about securing advances with experts? Again, this is one of my favorites. This is a newer opportunity that we have at Primerica because Primerica looked at this concept of someone with $2.5 million and said, you know what, someone with $25,000 deserves to have the same attention to their money. So we have what's called a managed account. And with as little as $25,000, you can have someone that watches your money on a daily basis, that knows the changes in the market while you're sleeping at night. That's a whole lot better than under the mattress. Can we agree?
Yes.
Yes. And finally, leveraging our strategic partnerships. That's really about turning to Primerica, turning to our experts, and turning to each other. So what we know is that if we follow these principles, if a family follows these principles, we can establish financial security for that family. Make sense? Yes. That means that that family can be protected if something happens. That family can make sure that they have the money they need for retirement. And that family can actually start to establish habits that they can teach to their children. And we can make a real change. Because what we know is if we start a habit, and then our children start that habit, then their children will start that habit even earlier. I've told this story before in this room. I talked to a guy who started saving money. His dad had taught him to save money, and he started investing at about age 21. His 14-year-old son is now investing in mutual funds. I said, this keeps up by age 2, right? The next generation will have started saving, which is exactly what we want. And we know that with this kind of saving and with these kind of habits and with this kind of plan, a family in 2 to 3 generations can achieve true wealth. can achieve true financial freedom. Well, that sounds pretty fantastic, right? That sounds like we can make a real impact in this country. And I think we can make a real impact for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. But my husband sat back and looked at this 2 to 3 generation game plan, and he said, this all sounds fabulous. He said, but that means that my great-grandchildren are going to have a picture of me up on their mantle, and everybody's going to toast to great-grandpa Brett at Thanksgiving. And he kind of likes the way he looks now. He kind of wants to be remembered as sort of this young guy with not as much gray hair. And he would like to enjoy and achieve financial freedom in this lifetime, in our community, and with our children. And so he said, okay, this 2 to 3 generation game plan, but I'd really like to think about and understand a 1 generation game plan. How can I start making a difference today, this second, in our lives? And so I'm going to invite the fabulous Brett Sears to come up and share his 1 generation game plan.
That was good. I had so much fun watching and listening to her. It was funny. We went and spoke for some folks on Saturday. It was the kind of the first time we've done a public, and we had this whole little thing where she was going to talk and I was going to talk, and then she's like, okay, and then I'm going to stop here and you're going to take over. And she's there, and I was just sitting there watching her, and she's like, am I supposed to keep talking? So I guess that's a good thing. So first of all, thank you guys for being here. I am incredibly excited. Thank you for all of our guests and being here at this. Everything that Sue talked about, it really, one of the things we want to make sure as we go through, the same thing with Robin, is that it's really easy to come to a meeting and have people excited and to kind of talk about things and go, oh, that's a novel idea. But it really becomes, for the second half of this conversation to make sense, we've got to kind of look at the first half, and you and I all have to ask ourselves, is it real? Is there a legitimate problem? Right? Because, and that kind of comes down, because a lot of us, look, did any of us really need to come to a meeting to have someone tell you should save money? How many of you knew you should have saved money before you showed up? Right? How many of us knew we should have protected our family before we showed up? Right? We should get out of debt before we showed up, right? We didn't really need to come. But at the end of the day, how easy is it for the day to go without doing all the things that we might want to do to create the life that we want? Does that make sense? And that's kind of what my part is, kind of where this is this might be, stake in the ground mentality. This is, okay, wait a second. Maybe I live my life one way for a really long time, but what if I shift? What if I pivoted? What if there was a time to change a bit? And that's really where this goes from, right? Because we talked about that 2 to 3 generation plan, right? But let me go through. But really, 50 years from now is a long time, isn't it? Right. And could you imagine making the commute that you make every day for the next 50 years? Could you imagine dealing with the employees every day, their bosses, right? Cindy told me tomorrow's boss's day, right? And I love Cindy, right? She's like, I'm getting them cards. And Cindy's the only person I've ever met in my entire life that was like, right? And there's like, he's excited for boss's day. I'm like, this is what they thought of. Like, when they thought it up, they're like, everyone's going to feel like Cindy. And everyone's like, no, Cindy's the only one. Right? But that's fantastic. And that speaks volumes of who you are. But most of us, when we think of any boss that we've had, have a certain picture. Right. Am I the only one that has some of those? Even if they're really nice people. Right? It's just as so we sat there and said, 50 years is a long time. And the problem for most of us is if we don't do the things that Robin talked about, we're not even going to be financially secure. So we have a tendency in a meeting like this to just assume we're going to do it all. But I always laugh going, I don't know if you guys have been on Facebook, but there's a big Billy Mills kind of thing going on. His birthday's coming up and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys know, but he's Native American, won 1954's gold medal, stuff like that. Well, it's funny is my mom sent me an email today. Billy Mills' mom was my grandmother's sister, right? So it's kind of this fun thing, and I've known all this stuff. So he's my cousin. He's my first cousin. I guess, is where this goes through that. My dad's first cousin, so I don't know. Cousins get me confused. I never understand. Like 3 generations can be one cousin. I don't get it.
Well, in Iowa.
And in Iowa. But the reason I thought about this is how many agree that your grandparents were really, really tough people? They did everything right? They put their kids first. They made sure that everything else, like it felt like they actually walked up both ways to school with no shoes on in the snow in Southern California. Like they did everything they were told to do, it felt like. And as a generation, they're broke. What do you think it's going to look like for us? We want everything when? Now, we want it new.
Yeah.
Right? How many of us have seen someone with an iPhone 5 going, they like need the new one?
Yeah.
Right? It's more powerful than the thing that put the space shuttle on the moon, but it can't do the new app. And I know better, right? I mean, the day that my watch came out, everything stuff. But when we talk about this, why? Because one, we shouldn't just assume that we're going to be okay. Because most historically, if you look at your friends and family, if you look at the community, most of us live the life that our parents and our friends live. That's what we learn about money. We learn from our parents and our friends what to do with our money. And my question is, do you want your parents' financial life? If the answer is no, then we better find other people to learn. If the answer is yes, then you better spend some quality time with them and make sure they teach you. Right? So we said, okay, wait a second. So one, we've got to make sure that gets done. But step 2 is, what about a 1-generation plan? Well, the only way to get free in this country is ownership in 1 generation. That and the lottery. And I'm just not that lucky, so we can just kind of mark that one off. But the reality, guys, is, and I don't know what ownership is, right? Tonight, we're going to have a pretty good system that we believe in, but the reality is, I believe that people need to figure out how to own something. That as long as somebody else has more control over our financial life, there's going to be a problem. When someone else can determine what we live, where we live, what we drive, what we spend, that might be a dilemma long term. And so we looked at this and said, okay, well, what type of opportunity, Rick? If we really wanted to talk about ownership, what would it need? Well, we looked back and said, if we really wanted to close this economic gap, there were some things we needed to have. We needed a way to harness what we call the Main Street entrepreneurial spirit. Well, what does that mean? How many of us have ever laid in bed saying, I can't do this one more day? And we dreamt about something. We dreamt about creating something, or opening a business, or doing this, or inventing that. And we're up until 2 o'clock in the morning. We've woken up our friends, or we've woken up, man, we just got, am I the only one that's ever done that? There's a spirit inside us that says, man, I don't want to feel like this anymore. The challenge is, if we don't have $500,000 of capital, is there a lot we can do about it? After 2 or 3 weeks, we get better going back to sleep, and we just start all over. We said, man, we've got to be able to harness that. We've got to have a way to leverage a support system. Why? I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to Harvard Business School. I don't understand the administration and the marketing and the travel. There's so much back end stuff to run a business. Is that fair? Yeah. Right? And if you think about everyone that I've ever met that started a small business, here's kind of how it worked. They worked for somebody else in a field. The somebody else was a bozo at some point, and they said, I can do what this knucklehead does. They then go out on their own and do a little part-time side work, and they go, man, I actually can do this on my own. They then leave, not their own deal. And they do the front end stuff, and they're pretty good at it. You know how we know they're pretty good at it? Because they were good enough to leave knucklehead in the first place. Y'all with me? But then after a week or a month or a year, all the back end stuff, like human resources and payroll and accounting and marketing and all the stuff that maybe they didn't do there, started to pile up. And so their attention went from what they knew on the front to what they needed to do in the back, which stopped them from growing the front. Well, what happens if you stop growing the front? The back problems get bigger, and all of a sudden, it becomes an avalanche. Well, they say most small businesses fail. 80% of all small businesses in this country fail in the first 5 years. Why? Because the owners are lazy? No. They're not smart Most of us don't have enough money to survive the mistakes and don't have a system in place to make sure that we can keep the front of the house going and the back of the house thriving. And we said, look, all of those two things are great, but we need a transitional path. Why? Because we could be the greatest speakers in the history of the world. An amazing speaker, I'm right? We got this great opportunity, and you could be inspired. My God, there's a big problem. But could you go to your job tomorrow and say, I'm out of here? My kids, I will eat next year. No. We could have the greatest opportunity in the history of the world. If it required you stopping doing what you were doing today, we could only grow with people that could afford to stop working today. Is that who the types of people we could attract if we want to change the world? No, what we said is we need an opportunity where someone can keep the security of their job. But what if you could build your freedom in your spare time? And what if over 3 months and 6 months and a year and 2 years you could develop a path and a transition, you could transition your way out of it by changing people's lives? Is there a legitimate opportunity to say, man, if we could harness that spirit, have a support system, and give a path that we could give Main Street entrepreneurs an opportunity to have a path to ownership? We said, man, we want to solve for this problem. Y'all with me?
Yes.
So we sat back and said, okay, well, we now know what we're looking for. Is it possible? Well, we laugh about this, but Primerica's been doing this for 35 years. We are the most successful business incubator in the history of America. We've created more six-figure earners and more millionaires than any company in American history. This isn't something we're trying to figure out. Listen, we know it works. The problem is that it's not getting any better. Every once in a while, people are like, why does Primerica grow the way it does? The 13 of us in the room can't save the 70 million. We could work really hard. 130 of us can't save the 70 million. 1,300 of us can't save the 70 million. Now, at some point, 1.3 million of us might be able to help the 70 million. Y'all with me? The reason that we've got to grow, the reason we've got to put the systems, we need a great story to fall on great ears, and we need everybody emotionally invested in this problem. We don't need everyone emotionally invested in doing it, but the goal of tonight, what Robin talked about, the ability to make sure that everyone understands. All of us know amazing people. And all of us realize that the people in our life need help. We just need a way to get the story to them. So we sat back and said, okay, well, how do we do this? What are we going to do? Well, he said, look, okay, if we're really going to grow, if we need the 1,300 and the 13,000 and the 1.3 million, and we understand who we're working with, the folks that are here, the ones that don't have $500,000 of capital laying around, the ones that can't, walk away from their job, the ones that don't have 30 years of business experience in their family, we've got to be able to create an environment for the folks we want to grow that's safe. So he said, one is we need low capital entry. Why? Mom loved me, but she's not loaning me $500,000. How about yours? Right? So we said, man, we need an opportunity to attract folks. If it costs $5,000 to get started, most of us, it could be the greatest opportunity in the world. If we don't have the $5,000, we're not doing it. Right. Is that fair? So we sat back. We said, man, we need to be able to have a partnership platform. This is Primerica's logo. It's designed that way very specifically. Primerica, we talk about this, the Blue Circle. They're a financial services company. There's 1,600 people in Duluth, Georgia right now that wake up every day saying, let's make sure that we have the products and services and support systems necessary to make sure that folks can take these products to the people who need them. We got a back office support company that says, man, we're going to make sure that all the training, all the resources, all the support systems that are necessary, all the back office stuff that most people get a drawn attention to can be done so people don't have to worry about that, so that we can make sure that the people in this room can keep the front of the house open and tell the story to the people who need it. So he said, what we've got to do is develop a strategic partnership mentality because it gives us the ability to have experts do their jobs. And then let's just call it what it is. We had to make sure it was worth it. We had to make sure that if you were going to take time, if I was going to take time away, we've got a 10-year-old and 12-year-old, and we've got twins coming. If we were going to take time away from our kids, it had to be worth it. I believe in profit. I believe reasonable profit for a reasonable service, but I believe that it's got to be there. And so we said, man, if we're going to do this, we need to have a way that we can attract people and give them an opportunity. We've got a platform for support, and it's worth it. And that's why we believe we've created something special. Is we said, man, we're going to create a place for everybody. Why are you here today? Because our business is built on AAA'z. Our business isn't built on sales. Our business is built on AAA'z. On everybody in our life understanding and supporting what we do. We ask folks, do you believe the problem is real? There's two answers, right? There's yes and there's no. Now, even the contrarian in the room, it's really hard to go, yeah, the 70 million there, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, hey, most of us aren't where we want to be. Do we think that's a problem? Yeah. Is the solution viable? If we provided access to the education and the tools of the wealthy to mainstream families and had a step-by-step game plan for them to be able to walk themselves out of the situation, could they follow that? Is that a legitimate solution? So if the problem is real, it's really easy for someone to go, yeah, I guess that's good. I guess the fact that you're doing that's good. Welcome to an hour. That's all it is. It's the number one thing. Why? Because taking on the world alone is hard. Feeling like you're in a fight by yourself is really hard. And so we said, man, I love a cheerleader session. I love when I talk to my mom and she asked me how things are going. I said, things are going great. She goes, honey, I'm proud of you. That feels good. That's way better than, oh, why are you doing it? So we said, man, we want everyone in our life to make sure that they're allies. But here's what we understand. We all know some great people. There are people that everyone in this room knows that the only thing that we have in common is you. And no one else is coming. Who showed up in your family's life and said, here's a game plan to get well? I haven't. Well, no one talked to me. There's a good chance they're not talking to my friends. What if my best friend, now think about this for a second. What if your very best friend had someone sit down, do a complete and total financial needs analysis, got you on a plan to protect your family in case something happens, got you on a plan to get out of debt, got you on a plan to save for retirement, got you on a plan to put your kids to college. This most dynamic plan. I mean, they were so fired. Y'all with me? Can you imagine? Your best friend, you guys all know, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Imagine they have this amazing. Now all of a sudden you're 67 years old. And you're calling them and you're like, hey, what's going on? You want to barbecue this weekend? And they're like, no. We're traveling. And you're like, well, why are you traveling? You're like, well, because we're retired and we're going to go do this and do that. Well, how'd you do that? Well, like 30 years ago, we built this plan. And just every year, we've just been building this plan. We figured you knew. Could you imagine how pissed your very best friend would be? Your best friend would say two things. One, you suck. Does anyone know what the second thing they would say would be? Can I borrow some money? Now, none of us want to disappoint our best friend. So it's better to help them now. You guys are excited. See, I've been here 18 years. I got in the business. I was 22 years old with $24,000 of credit card. The only thing I knew about money, they didn't have it. And everyone has their different philosophies and different things. I have never asked for referrals. Ever. And then people, and when I say that out loud, every once in a while people in business are like, that's stupid. And I go, look, in our business, if I help somebody and I go, hey, who do you know? I don't want to ask, who do you know? They don't want to give me any names. Is that fair? Right. And the person who got the name doesn't want to get the call. So if you were going to build your business on 3 yucky things, like that's not a really attractive thing. Is that fair? What we did is we said, you know what? I love recommendations. So what we do is we say, we're going to be the type of people who. I get lots of people to go, you got to meet this guy Sears, man. There's just something about him. He's passionate, man. You got to know him. It's amazing how fun those conversations can be. Not, hey, I need a retirement account versus, hey, I was told you and I need to talk. So he said, man, we're going to develop an advocate network where people can get emotionally involved in what we're doing because we can't solve the problem alone. And if we understand that there's a problem and we understand that the people in our lives don't have access to the emotional responsibility that all of us can feel to help them to move that back. And then there are going to be some that say, I want to play. That one generation plan makes sense. I want an opportunity to not feel like this anymore. No one's showing me and my family how to get wealthy short term. No one's showing me how I want to be a part of something different. I know people that aren't interested in making a bunch of money, but they want to help people. I know people who like help people, but they want to get rich. There's a place for all of us. We sat back and said, man, so we have an opportunity for the associates, but it's because all of us prioritize things differently. So we said, man, we created different spots. We created one we call our GAPs, our Gathering Gas Partners. Why? This is one of the most crazy things. 10,000 people are turning 65 years old in this country every day for the next 19 years. And it's the first generation to ever have a 401k. Their parents had pensions, $1,800 a month showing up. Now think of this. Think about our parents. Think about folks that are 62, 63, 68 years old that have been making between 30, 50, 60, $100,000 a year. Have the financial advisors been showing up and giving them a lot of guidance? No. Do they have any money? No. They're making $80,000 a year in Southern California. Does this make sense? But they've been saving in their 401k, so now they have $60,000 or $80,000 or $200,000 or $500,000 on a piece of paper. Is it real money to them? No, because they're not spending it. And now all of a sudden they retire. And they have this piece of paper with $811,000 on it. Who do they have to help them? Now what happens if the financial advisors show up then? What's the likelihood of them putting the client, historically, them putting the client's best interest at heart in that moment? Not gonna happen. You want to know why we attract some amazing people that have no interest in building a business? Because they can help stand in that gap. There's a group of people that say, man, if I could just save the people I know and give them access to the tools to let someone else do it, man, I made a difference in somebody's life. But for every $1 million of assets under management, it's $4,300 a year in passive income. Well, serious, why is that a big deal? The average person in this country starts working at 22. They retire at 67. And the average Social Security check is $1,269. 47 years of work for $1,300. Make sense? If someone works with us for 5 years and finds $1 million a year, they have $1,800 a month in passive income. In 3 or 4 or 5 years, we can show somebody how to build an asset that's stronger than Social Security for the family, while changing people's lives. We said we want space for everyone. We're going to have some folks that want to be part-time, that want to make an extra $500,000 a month, love their job, don't want to do anything different. We're going to have some that don't celebrate Boss's Day quite the same as Cindy, and they're like, hey, this is great, but if I could build a business and make $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 a month, and at one point I said, hey, I love my boss, but I love my family more, and I'm going to move on. There's a school transition there, and there's going to be some that say, I want to be an owner. See, the greatest thing about ownership I didn't understand is every business has the opportunity for passive income, revenue, and profit. As an employee, do we get paid on work that we did before? Do we? So we don't get passive income. How many of us have ever been responsible for training someone at our job? After we train them, does the company pay us more money? After they're doing what they're doing, is the company more profitable? Do we get paid? No. The company creates profit because there's someone else that can do it without us doing it. So we, as employees, we don't experience passive income and we don't experience profit, but we get paid for the work we do. If we stop working, we lose that. You want to know why ownership is so critical? It's an opportunity to leverage the 3 different components. So we said, okay, if that's what it's going to take, what is our opportunity? What's the primary opportunity? Well, for $15 million of assets under management, someone becomes a regional vice president. In over a year, 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years, or however long it takes, they develop 15 members. It's $100,000 a year in passive income. If they teach 30 people how to just get $1 million, that's an additional $8,300. If you build an office, there's 13, 15 of us. If each of us help 2 families a month, that's 30 days. Can we all agree that if there's 70 million families, helping 2 is not an overly aggressive goal? Right. You build it for your revenue. And my favorite part, because I was a 22-year-old waiter that never had a shot to own. If someone took the time and said, look, if I can teach you everything I know and you can leverage the systems, we have a shot. We need leaders. We need folks that want to change their life. So what we're going to do is we're going to align our goals. And if we develop a regional vice president, them and their organization just help 15 families, The promoting RVP gets paid $6,200 a month for $72,000 a year. Now, I'm not the greatest in math, but I go, if I do 1, that's 72, 2, 144, 210, 280, 5 vice presidents, $350,000 in profit. Wait, 200,000 in passive income, 200,000 in revenue, 350 in profits, $750,000 a year in income. If you took $20,000 and paid your taxes, $20,000 to live. How many think you could live on $20,000 a month if you needed to? That allows you to save $25,000 a month. How long would you and I need to save $25,000 a month before we could do what we want, with whom we want, in any fashion and style that we wanted? We said we wanted a legitimate one-generation plan. We needed a legitimate market that could solve a need. We needed a solution that we could explain and reach people. And we needed a mechanism that we could attract the best of the best. We could attract the folks with that entrepreneurial spirit. Everyone goes, oh, you prep America. I go, man, my job. Someone asked me, who are you looking for? Okay, I understand this, but tell me, who are you looking for? So I'm looking for people that have maxed out their opportunity and not their capacity. People that realize that they've worked as hard as the job and they've earned as much as the job can pay them. Because people don't get paid in this country, positions get paid. And that's not a problem, that's just the reality. If you were your boss, how much would you pay you? As little as possible to keep you. Well, that doesn't sound very nice. It's true. And it would be impossible to do it any other way. All we did is said, if we could leverage the systems, we could control it. And whether it's spare time, part-time with a passion to get out, or an entrepreneur that says, man, I want to be in 10 cities in 5 years. There's a space for all of us, for our allies, for our advocates, and for our associates. Tonight, this is why you're all here. This is why you're here. This is why we're here. We all fit. Because we can't solve this problem alone, guys. No one else is coming. The good news is, no one else has to. We can stand in this gap if we understand that we can create a place for everybody in our life. But we have to stop taking our role for granted. So we said, look, the movement continues. We're going to be back here next Wednesday. And we could put 30 people in a room, 50 people in a room, 20 people in a room, 6 people in a room. Guys, we're going to tell the story. We're going to grow because the good ideas are going to fall in the right ears. And there's an opportunity for us to say, man, not on our watch, not anymore. So regardless of where things go, why you're here. We've got training back here on Saturdays. We always laugh, jeans and t-shirts on Saturdays to kind of come out and really have an understanding of what's going on. If something emotionally triggered, spend the time with the person who brought you. Get you questions answered. The clearer you can be on what's next for you, the better the opportunity is. This is what our shop does. It's an opportunity for all of us to go. The time we spent here, and that's what we want to be about. So, from us, we wanted to thank you guys for being a part of this. If there's any questions, we'll be here. Thank you for coming. Have a busy night. Thank
Good. Yeah. My nose is
More than anything.